I'm going to start
But
when the machine gets its act together. It can catch up. I've been working on issues of ecology for 5 decades. And it was the Punjab eruption of violence, because I'd done my MSc Honours in Physics from Punjab University, peaceful land. By 84, the army had to be sent, Indira Gandhi was assassinated, all part of what had happened to Punjab with the so-called Green Revolution, which I say was not green and was not revolutionaries, because revolutions happen from the bottom up. Coups happen from the top down. It was a coup of the first coup of industrial agriculture. And I don't think it's, and the same year Bhopal happened, the Bhopal disaster happened. And I invite all of you to stay in touch with my colleague Neha, who's here, because we do want to continue this discussion around the group of companies that I have named the poison cartel. First, it's too difficult to talk about too many poisons. You know, one day it's a glyphosate debate, one day it's a neonicotide, one day it's organophosphate. It goes on and on and on. But they all make poisons and they were designed to kill. And their original journey began in Hitler's journey. This is the group. IG Farben was the collection of companies, and all of the American companies had partnerships with IG Farben. Whether it was Standard Oil, the big oil monopoly, or at those days Monsanto and Bayer had one company called Mobe. Dow, DuPont were all partners. And Bayer, which has bought Monsanto recently, is known as the aspirin maker. The aspirin maker gets in together with the agrochemical giant. No, Bayer was always in chemicals, and it made heroin. The word heroin was, it makes you feel like a hero. They are the beginning of the drug addiction. They began in Hitler's Germany to make chemicals that kill. And after the wars, they said, oh my God, what do we do with all of this? Either shut shop, which is what they should have done, or change the very basis of our thinking about how food is grown. One of the slogans of these companies was, because the process for making synthetic chemical nitrogen fertilizer, urea, is the same process that is used for making explosives. You burn fossil fuels at high temperature, and it fixes the atmospheric nitrogen. And the slogan was, bread from air. We will never have food scarcity again because we make bread from air. But bread doesn't grow from air. And nitrogen fixing has a much better option in the pulses and the legumes, which is what Indian peasants had always done. One of the things that's usually deliberately erased in our history is that in 1905, the British had sent their main scientist. In those days, there was no discipline of agricultural science. The British Empire had a discipline of economic botany. How do you apply botany for commercial raw material? And Albert Howard was sent to India in 1905 to improve Indian agriculture, because every time you're colonized, we are improved. We're permanently being improved. And today's discussion is about the latest improvement that we must undergo. Howard comes here, and he was sent to Pusa to set up the Pusa Institute, what would have become the university. But they had an earthquake, which is why Pusa Institute moved to Delhi. And after a while, Howard gave up trying to make the fragmented thinking change. Because the word organic is not about a product, it's not about a brand, it's not about the market. The word organic is how you think. Organic means knowledge of living systems. That's what the word organic means. And I believe the attack on organic is partly because this holistic knowledge of living systems is what will show humanity the way out of the collapse and the crisis. But if humanity finds that way, then the poison cartel doesn't have its future profits. That is the issue. The attack on organic that's happening by new words like zero budget this and zero budget that, and I'm going to talk about the roots of zero budget. How it comes to India, sees the fields of Bihar, and since the soils are so fertile, there are no pests damaging the crop. I'm going to make the Indian peasant and the pest my professor. And he wrote a book called the Agricultural Testament, which then became the basis of chemical-free farming, which then spread as organic farming all around the world. Rodale had come from India to meet Howard. He went back and started the Rodale Institute. Eve Balfour read Howard's book, The Agricultural Testament, and we should be having copies outside which are being published by Earthcare Books. For those of you who want to read Howard, you should. Because if you want to know what's Indian agriculture, read Howard. When I was writing my book on agriculture, on the Green Revolution, I realized there was no written material on how we do farming. My mother was a farmer, but the writings were all on chemicals. And it was only Howard's book that showed how ecological farming, and he identified two principles that I have adopted throughout my work and is the principle of the basis of Navdanya. The first principle is never a monoculture, always diversity. Always mixed farming. Never do a monoculture, because organic is farming like nature, and nature never uses a monoculture. She always has diversity. The second, which is the most important principle, which in a way Bablu was touching on in a practical way on the organic matter. He says, civilizations of the East, the Orient at that time, have farmed this way for 10,000 years. The agriculture is as permanent as you could possibly make it. Because farmers of the Orient farm in nature's ways. That's why this artificial conflict being created between natural and organic is totally another divide and rule policy. It has nothing to do with science, it has nothing to do with farming. The law of return is vital. You have to give back to the earth part of what she gives to you. If you don't return organic matter, the desertification will happen. That's the COP14 happening right now on land degradation and desertification. It's going to be costing humanity 63 trillion in a few years' time, land degradation, because of chemical farming. These two principles, diversity and the law of return, which in contemporary language we could call the circular economy. Maintaining the cycles of nature. And the two basic cycles are the nutrition cycle and the water cycle. And all good farming is about maintaining these two. Now, I don't see zero budget ever talking about these two cycles. Never. Well, the Green Revolution destroyed Punjab, which is why I wrote this book. In those days, working for the United Nations University, The Violence of the Green Revolution. And realized we had been taken for a ride. Because chemicals don't feed us. We had been taken for a ride on the issue of yield, because we are always told the Green Revolution seeds and chemicals produce more. Norman Borlaug got a Nobel Peace Prize for that. But yield only is a part of a part of a part. It's not the system. The whole system, in fact, is hugely impoverished. And in our new book, Biodiversity, Agroecology and Regenerative Organic Agriculture, that is a synthesis of 35 years of our work as well as 35 years of scientific research, we've reproduced FAO data on output of farms. The smaller the farm, the more it produces. That is why 80% of the food we eat, even today, after these decades of chemical farming, 80% of the food comes from small farms. Across the world, the smaller the farm, the more it produces, and you can see how the graph collapses as it gets larger. But the yield is a trick, because it only measures what leaves the farm. It doesn't measure what the state of the farm is, whether the soil is there, the water is there, biodiversity is there, pollinators are there, butterflies are there. None of that. Doesn't measure the cost of production. And it definitely doesn't measure the impact on the environment and the farmer. So it's a totally cooked up measure to force a monoculture chemical agriculture and make it look like the country is progressing and the farmers are progressing while farmers get deeper into debt. And then with the next level, which I call often the second green revolution, so the second green revolution illegally brought in, seeds were brought in 1995, the GMO BT cotton seed, about which Aruna will talk in much detail about performance. But I'd like to go to the prehistory, before the approval. The seeds are brought in 95. Global companies, the cartel, which is now 4, they never work directly. They find domestic partners and they find a partner government. Because if they came directly, we know how to fight for freedom. And we won't allow the colonization. So they joined them, Monsanto joined them with Mexico, and in 98, there were big ads in the newspapers. Monsanto was announcing that the following year, Indian farmers will be using Bolgard cotton. Now I'd studied this, and its failure for America. So I rang up the Ministry of Environment, did you give approval? Because we have a compulsory law that any new seed must be tested in 22 agroclimatic zones for 2 years before it is released. He said, no. We've never heard of Monsanto, we don't know what BT cotton is. I rang up the Ministry of Environment, which is the body that is supposed to regulate. You know, never heard of it. So we filed a case in 99 January on the illegal introduction of BT cotton. And then we used to monitor it every year, and every year the suicides grew in the BT cotton areas. I think this report was reprinted about 8 editions, and then our data is that big. We can't put it into a book anymore of the farmers' suicides. The farmers' suicides, the numbers are too small, but there's an interesting new phenomenon, and I call it the zero budget policy and planning. The zero budget is too much hunger. Every 4th Indian hungry, every 2nd child malnourished. What's the solution? We are now 103 in the 119 list, in the hunger index. Stop taking malnutrition data. When too many farmers, 320,000 farmers, commit suicide, how do you address the problem? Stop releasing suicide data. So, big problem, shut your eyes. You know, remember the monkeys? Shut your eyes, close your ears. But don't shut your mouth. That must carry on. The GMO performance, Aruna's going to go deeper into.
No, I'm not.
No, you will.
No.
No?
I'm talking agroecology.
Oh, you're talking agroecology.
No GMO. No GMO.
No GMO. Okay, so let me just mention quickly. So when in the early days of the GMO question, I used to debate these companies. They used to say, we'll, just like they said, bread from the air, they said, we'll grow food and in the Sahara Desert or on toxic dumps. Because we'll be able to engineer any trait into the crop. Today, what do we have? 2 toxic traits. BT, Bacillus thuringiensis in the seed, which releases its own toxin in the plant, and in America is approved as a pesticide, not as a plant, as a pesticide. It's a pesticide making plant. It's supposed to control pests. Monsanto said you'll never have to spray. Last year, 135 farmers died of pesticide poisoning in Maharashtra. This is a crop where pesticide wasn't supposed to be used, but the bollworm has evolved resistance. And there's a Cotton Competition Commission decision saying that it's a monopoly. About 99% of the BT cotton seed is owned and controlled by Monsanto. Now, they never had a patent because we worked on laws at that time. And there's a book that is all of the issues of intellectual property and seed and biodiversity. We managed to get Article 3J in our patent law, which says seeds cannot be patented because they're living systems. I was asked to write be part of the expert group to write the law. We said, we don't have to do UPAW, which is the Industrial Breeders' Rights, because our farmers are the breeders. We need a farmer's right. So we wrote the Plant Variety Protection and Farmers' Rights Act. So having destroyed Punjab, of course the companies were waiting for the next turn. Monsanto now is trying very hard to make it look like their hybrid corn will be the solution. And if you notice in December, talk will start on the farmers burning the crop. First of all, it's not December, they harvest by November. But when you do the dwarf variety, which you pretend has a higher yield, it doesn't. Mr. Swaminathan himself has said all it is a different partitioning. It reduces the straw. And in proportion to the straw, it has higher yield of grain. But measured in terms of biodiversity production, it is very, very low. Punjab actually lost food production capacity, lost its soil, lost its water, lost its youth. Every third farmer, every third youth is a drug addict, very high rates of suicide, and there's a cancer train that leads Punjab. All because of this chemical farming. Now I remember that time, after I'd just done the book, Pepsi entered the scene and presented itself as PepsiCo for peace. That it was going to grow potatoes and tomatoes. And we've done so many studies on this since then. Pepsi got 10 rupees a kilo from the government for export subsidies. They paid the farmer 50 pice a kilo for the tomatoes. It failed, eventually it was sold off to, I think, Voltas or one of the Indian companies. What we've seen since then is a concentration of the seed industry. That's what the concentration looks like. No matter who you are, you're locked in. Indian companies haven't been bought out, but they're locked in licensing arrangements and cannot sell anything but BT cotton. They were lied to that Monsanto had a patent, which they didn't. And these cases are still in the court. And the same companies control the agrochemicals, the seed. And now they're moving into the next stage, which I would call, in summary, the zero budget farming. How is this working? This is working with the convergence of finance, because since globalization, capital and finance was deregulated. And in America, this led to that collapse of Wall Street in 2008, because savings used to be in one place and investments used to be in another place. They allowed the law that keeps the separate to be broken down. And as a result, the big money could dig into people's savings, which is why pension funds disappeared, which is happening in our country now. This merger and concentration of banks is part of this process. So basically, there's now a combination of the big billionaires, and the billionaires themselves are so rich that 5 globally control as much wealth as half of the world's population, and in India, the 5 big billionaires control half of India's wealth. Where do they make their wealth? Rent collection, mergers and acquisitions. With that kind of money, one of the asset management firms, BlackRock, which has big shares in BNP Paribas, which is a big player in the so-called zero budget. It needs so much money, and I know Leo will talk much more about that. But BlackRock, between 2008, when it was nothing, to today it's 6 trillion. You've been seeing the TV programs on the Amazon fires? BlackRock has huge investments in most of the companies that are setting the forest on fire. GMO soya cultivation, for more meat production. The fires are fires of greed. And we're talking of such heavy concentration of money and so much multiplication of money out of money out of money through new instruments of money making, that this hungry money wants everything. As Anil said, they want every bit of natural resources. They want everything. They've been seeking the seed, and they wanted to patent it, which is why I started now. Yes, it's sorry, seed is not your invention. You don't invent the seed, and therefore you can't have a patent. And we write our laws to say you can't have a patent. We've kept them out of the seed issue, but they keep coming back. So the first element is the financial entry of global financiers without any regulation. The second is a new merger of the biotechnology industry and the so-called information technology industry, which is digitalization. Now, Bill Gates is very big in this. He has set up the Svalbard Seed Bank up in Norway. Every place, this packet, but all you need is 3 seeds to do the genomic reading. And they're taking patents on the genomic reading without ever having worked on a seed, without ever having done any breeding. Guesswork in a casino. We'll make a guess that drought tolerance comes from this part of the genome. It's a very fast race, and Bill Gates is leading it. A few months ago, I debated, actually at the Vatican, on the future of food. And after my keynote speech, the FAO person was there, and he talked about dematerialization of biodiversity. And it was all about digital reading, genomic maps. I said, the fact that you can make a genomic map doesn't dematerialize the living system. It's as much as when the British made maps, it did not dematerialize the land. To make us think the real world is disappearing is part of why they need organic thinking that is related to the real world to disappear. So, if you can go back to AgTech. Okay, so they're calling it, we call the right way of farming as working with the laws of nature. The laws of nature are ecology. Therefore, agriculture done according to laws of nature is agroecology. Very simple definition. They are pushing this new language, AgTech. And this is all happening in the last 2 years. If you know what's circled, are Monsanto and Syngenta. Monsanto Ventures is the entry of Monsanto into digital with Silicon Valley firms, and the same is the case with Syngenta. They now are big in the digital, and Monsanto has said there are only 2 entities that need surveillance technologies, CIA and us, because they're turning agriculture into a surveillance domain. I mean, why at a time when farmers of India are committing suicide, all you do is spend money on drones? That's what government of India did. It spent money on drones for agriculture. Go to the next one. Now, those are all the new sprouting companies. And there's a new word for the peons of the poison cartel. They're called startups. So that circle is the startup that's being promoted in India. It's called Crop In. Who supports them and who are their clients? So Gates is there, Seed Ventures is there, Climete, and all our Indian companies are being drawn into this. They have actually created a partnership with the Punjab government. Brinda, you move it? Okay, now here's a startup. Just started a few months ago, one boy sitting in Hyderabad, all of them sit in Hyderabad. And suddenly there's a startup. On everything funny, it happens. Look, overnight, there are 5 million, there's 92% of this, so many countries, so many this. Is that how it works? No, that's because all of the old giants and the Bill Gates money is behind it. The next one. This is how they see the future. And the next one. Precision farming, Monsanto has defined this as farming without farmers. Surveillance drones, spyware in the tractors. The reason tractor loans have jumped in the last budget is because if it's a bullock cart, or a plow, you can't put spy. And for those of you who love animals, I would say we need a campaign on Nandi. Because if you've been seeing the female only offspring discussion that started in the animal husbandry is basically saying we do not need the male offspring. But the male offspring is the animal energy. Whether it's for a plow as an alternative to the tractor, or in the villages the bullock cart. It's because this cannot treat the freedom of the bullock. But we have another way. And that's what we've been doing, and the results are there to see. No, before I go there, because it's not in the file. So where in all of this? I mentioned finance. I mentioned the convergence of information technology and biotechnology and GMOs. But the entry of finance is really the reason for the language of zero budget. Zero budget is not a method of farming. If it was about low cost or zero external inputs, we've had that farming forever. That's what organic is, that's what biodynamic is, that's what permaculture is, that's what Jaivik is, that's what Prakritik is. Hundreds of ways in which you don't spend money on external inputs. So there's nothing new in whatever is being promoted in terms of an agriculture model. The Andhra Pradesh issue, Leo will explain. But we've done some research, and I've looked at it very closely in the last few weeks. Zero budget is actually a corporate budget system. And it's new. And it's the new step. You see, they've always been cutting their costs and maximizing their profits. So we can talk of it as privatizing profits and socializing costs, externalizing the cost to nature and externalizing the costs to farmers and eaters. We've done a report on wealth per acre, which on the externalities shows that every year in India, just on environmental and destruction, farmers' destruction, the cost is $1.3 trillion. 1.3 trillion. The shadow. And if you add to it the health costs, everyone's second person has cancer, every third person has kidney failure, everyone's got diabetes. Just look around you. Just look around you. That's about 1.5 trillion too. And it's just, the graph is going like that. So zero budget was worked out by the investors who now were buying up companies and then putting them together. It said, cut your costs. It was first applied when Buffett and 3G bought up Heinz, Heinz the tomato ketchup. And then they forced them to merge with Kraft, which was a cheese maker. And they said, and that's the first time zero budget accounting was used. Zero budget basically is a system which says every year you bring your budget to zero. You don't remember what you did last year. You don't think of what you have to do tomorrow. You every year bring your budget to zero and then only allocate heads that are absolutely necessary for maximizing your returns. Rate of return is the only thing that counts. So anything that goes beyond doesn't count. If your rate of return goes up by squashing 500,000 animals in one factory farm, then zero budget says you can't leave your animals free range. I actually have a graph on a zero budget cow. It's a literal, New Zealand dairy is using it, zero budget cow. All she is a bunch of diseases, poor girl. There's no cow. Okay? She's sick. Her udders are bad, this is bad, that's bad, you're allowed to have this much medicine. And then you have to do a minimization per unit. So Heinz Kraft, where the first time it was applied, the first year, of course you cut costs, your profits increase. But you cut costs at the cost of cutting that which is vital to running the system. So they shed all the experienced staff because the salaries were higher. They shed all the relationship people because they said, why waste money? We'll do it digitally. We'll just get orders. Smart distribution. Within 4 years, Kraft Heinz had collapsed. Today, have, as good as lost half of their earnings. So zero budget did not work in the private corporate sector as a profit maximization thing because it cut the very foundation. To apply zero budget, and I think we should leave Subhash Parekar aside because he was just a prop for this game. He's not the main player. The main player is the global investors who want to get into agriculture in a very big way. And just like at the time of the Green Revolution, India is what was targeted. The whole world was there. But why was India and Punjab targeted? Because we are the land with the richest farming. Punjab, of all the lands, was the richest. Today, India is the land with the largest number of farmers, the largest amount of gram. Where do you go in Africa which you've desertified? Are you going to apply these systems there? No, you can't. The biggest grab of the economy is India right now. So just imagine, Nirmala Sitharamanji, it introduces the phrase zero budget farming. Natural has gone. Zero budget farming is not about how you farm. Zero budget farming is about how you budget, how you run your economy. Now what made Kraft Heinz collapse, if this was to be applied, that every year you erase your past obligations, and every year you say, this is the budget we allocate. If subsidies to the tractor matter more, I'm going to give subsidies to the tractor. If a drone or a giant machine is cheaper to run, get rid of the farmers. Monsanto's new slogan is farming without farmers. People everywhere are costly. Education budgets, Gates has done this mess in America. Why do we need teachers? You got Siri and Alexa. Siri is, I think, Apple's assistant, and Alexa is Amazon's assistant. So the whole reason this big push is there are these billionaires and investors with all our bright young minds sitting in the software, artificial intelligence, machine learning system. And they think human beings are too pestering. Yeah? They're too expensive to maintain. A cow is too expensive to maintain. People are too expensive to maintain. Get rid of them. Replace everything with artificial intelligence and machine learning. Zero budget is the entry point for this. Andhra Pradesh is the experiment in all of this. We don't have to go that way. I'll run through this because I know Aruna and Leo have to speak. If you can go to the... So how do we do it differently? Not by a zero budget farming, but by a full cost, true cost accounting system. Where we take into account all costs to nature and take into account our duty to give back to the earth. We take into account all costs to society. We take into account all costs to health. I'm so glad there's so many young people in this room. Because when we all started, 3-4 decades ago, I always used to say in the West, the organic movement grew because of consumer demand. In India, it is growing because of farmers' choice. But that has changed because the 20 years of destruction of farmers' lives has crippled our farmers. Our farmers will be able to make the choice for agroecology only if they're eaters who say, I respect you, I trust you, and you're the only one who can bring me real food. Because besides the fake economics of zero budget and the real economy of true cost accounting, the fake farming of chemical farming and GMOs, and the real farming of agroecology, there's also the new contest between fake food, Impossible Burger, Byond Burger, they call it Ahimsa Burger in again Hyderabad, poor Hyderabad. This is how farming is done in this country, and this is how we're committed to continue to do it, and this will not happen without solidarity between those in the cities and those in the agriculture. This is just a field on our farm now, 12 crops. That's how in the Himalaya. 9 crops is what Navdanya means. Navdanya means 9 crops together. That cooperation produces more food. It has climate resilience. We've just had horrible floods, but these mixtures survive. And the farmers' incomes. The more the diversity, we've done these studies, the higher the income. We can feed 2 times India's population by getting rid of chemicals and intensifying biodiversity. Because if you get rid of chemicals, it's only biodiversity that can do the work of soil fertility renewal, pest control, weed control, etc. This is, we say yield per acre is a misleading term. It doesn't measure the quality of the food, the nutrition in the food, the cost of the farming. Health per acre is the nutrition per acre. And the wealth per acre is where on the one hand we calculated the externalities, but the farmers having their own seed, farmers having their own methods of farming and control over their market are earning 10 times more than the farmers chasing. And here I think it's very important to remember, there's this doubling farm income talk. Just the other day, on the 27th of August, there was a news item, the Centre plans wider method to measure income of farmers. This method of farmers' income is not about farming. If you have a son who went into software, his income will be added to your income from collapsing farm incomes. And that's how doubling of farming will be achieved. The target is 1 lakh and by adding other people's incomes, not the person who's on the land farming. So the truthful accounting, the true cost accounting is a vital aspect on which we have to organize. Another aspect we have to organize around is the surveillance technologies. And this Profane has already signed contracts in Punjab. And they want to spy on the farmer from the seed all the way to the selling of the product. And Pepsi's big in this. They already tried to sue the farmers of Gujarat, but it was the law we wrote that farmers' right to save, exchange, sell seed can never be alienated. Article 39 of the Plant Variety Farmers' Rights Act. That made them have to withdraw the case. But now what they're doing is they're going under the radar through digitalization to create a surveillance ownership and surveillance control system. So we've always worked for farmer seed sovereignty. I think it's vital that we find this proposed compulsory certification that has been, and they're very clever because they also control the media, they just plant a story. Yeah? Which is why our friends in the media need to plant the truthful story. It's really now about the fake and the true. It's a satyagraha. I call it the satyagraha for life. What we are discussing today is not just a satyagraha for freedom, it's a satyagraha for life. I'm so glad all of you are here. I'm so glad we all got together. And I know that the only way to beat trillions of dollars in the hands of Amazon and Bill Gates is our solidarity and our trust.